Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're looking at something profoundly human, diving straight into the themes of enduring friendship and mutual support found in a beautiful story titled The Friend Who Stayed. We're going to skip any long preamble today because, honestly, the mechanics of how total strangers become absolute anchors in our lives, that's something that touches every single one of us. It's basically the architecture of how we survive this crazy world. Picture this. You're walking into a new classroom. You've got your backpack, you're stepping into an entirely established ecosystem, and everyone just stares. Total silence. The sheer weight of that quiet is crushing. You can almost feel that backpack getting 10 pounds heavier, right? It's just you in a deafening room full of people where you know absolutely no one. The source material captures this beautifully with a single, highly relatable truth. Starting over is never easy. We've all felt that distinct, heavy vulnerability of stepping into the unknown, completely untethered from anyone who actually knows us. I really want you to think about that for a second. Have you ever been the new kid in a crowded room? It doesn't just happen in school, It happens at new jobs, random social gatherings, or when you pack up and move to a new city. That feeling of being totally surrounded by people, yet completely and utterly isolated, is one of the most uniquely challenging things we go through as humans. We desperately crave connection, but the gap between us and them feels practically unbridgeable. Okay, let's dive into this and look at exactly how that barrier is broken. All right, Section 1, the spark of connection, or breaking the isolation barrier. And this brilliantly illustrates the exact genesis moment of an enduring friendship. Notice the profound contrast here. On one side, we have the painful reality of being left out. The isolated student sitting all alone at lunch while groups of classmates laugh together in their own closed circles. It's the physical manifestation of feeling invisible. But then we see the absolute antidote, the reaching hand. A classmate simply walks over with a genuine smile and asks, "Mind if I sit here?" To which the new student replies, "I'd like that." It's such a remarkably simple gesture, yet it requires a huge amount of courage to bridge that gap and literally offer someone a seat at your table. The source text follows up this interaction with a realization that hits the nail on the head. Sometimes, one conversation changes everything. As the two start eating together, laughing, getting to know one another, the entire landscape of that new student's life shifts. It just goes to prove that it only takes one small moment of vulnerability, one willingness to just say hello, to completely alter someone's trajectory. Mutual support doesn't usually start with some grand, lifelong vow. It starts with a shared conversation or a simple act of inclusion on an otherwise lonely Tuesday. Moving on to Section 2, building a shared foundation, the daily work of friendship. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that once that initial spark is lit, the connection doesn't just magically sustain itself on autopilot. Mutual support requires active, intentional cultivation. Look at the absolute normality of these building blocks. Studying together, playing games, riding bikes, helping out with homework. These are incredibly mundane, everyday activities. But honestly, that is exactly where the magic happens. Trust isn't usually built in grand, cinematic moments. It is forged in the quiet consistency of simply showing up for one another over and over again. Those small acts weave together to create an unbreakable foundation. And because of that strong foundation, the relationship evolves. The narrative shows a moment where the new student is stressing out, feeling incredibly nervous during a tough exam, and the friend just leans over and says, "You've worked hard, believe in yourself." This is a huge transition point. We're seeing the shift from mere companions who happen to ride bikes together to active emotional supporters who fortify each other's confidence. It's the exact moment you and I starts becoming us. Which brings us to Section 3, weathering life's storms together, the true trial of endurance. Let's move to and see how this builds, because a friendship built only in the sunshine hasn't truly been tested. True mutual support is defined by what happens when the storms inevitably roll in. Months later in the story, the dynamic flips entirely. The friend, the one who initially reached out in the cafeteria, starts facing serious family problems and begins isolating. The formerly new student notices this absence and knocks on their door. Of course, the friend tries to deflect with a classic, "I'm okay," putting up that familiar emotional wall we all use when we're hurting. But here is the most critical step. The new student absolutely refuses to leave. They step up to return the support they were once given, creating a completely safe, unyielding space. When faced with that deflection, the new student simply replies, "You don't have to pretend with me." Unconditional acceptance. Giving someone the permission to take off their armor, to stop smiling when they want to cry, and just be broken in front of you without the fear of judgment. It is, without a doubt, one of the rarest and most beautiful gifts one human being can give to another. The friend finally opens up, and the two of them just sit together in the quiet. And the text gives us this incredible takeaway. Real friends don't always have the right words. They simply stay. So the crucial point is this. Sitting together in silence, just bearing witness to someone's pain, is often vastly more powerful than trying to fix their problems. How often do we scramble to find the perfect advice, when all our friend really needs is for us to just sit beside them in the dark? Presence is the ultimate form of support. Finally, Section 4, the true meaning of friendship, a lifelong journey. So, what happens when two people build this kind of reciprocal bond? We get to see the long-term payoff. Look at this chronology of connection spanning vast seasons of life. They transition from the vulnerability of youth, weathering those family storms together, right into the triumphs of young adulthood, proudly smiling side by side in caps and gowns on graduation day. And then we jump to years later. The busy reality of adulthood is fully set in. They're consumed with work, maybe families, just everyday life, but they still make time for each other over coffee. The profound lesson here is that while life inevitably pulls us a million different directions, true friends deliberately and consciously carve out time for each other. Enduring connection requires real, deliberate action. The story concludes with the two friends walking into the sunset, laughing just exactly like they did on their very first day in that cafeteria. And it leaves us with this final defining thought. Listen closely to this. Friendship isn't about who has been with you the longest. It's about who walked into your life, stood beside you through every storm, and never gave you a reason to walk alone. It's really not about time at all. It is entirely about consistency, presence, and unwavering mutual support. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a question to reflect on today. Who was the person that stood by you through every storm? Think about the friends who stayed in your own life, the ones who offered you a seat at the table when you needed it the absolute most. Maybe take a second today to reach out and remind them that you're still sitting there with them. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive, and keep seeking out those connections that matter.